Welcome to the video. In this video, I just want to give you kind of a hint before you begin calculus and then studying the rates of change for your sinusoidal functions, what to actually kind of review beforehand, because in calculus, most of the time, your teachers are going to be assuming that you have gone through that material in the past. They might give you a little bit of a review, but they won't give you too much. Now, what is it that we should review, or what should we be comfortable with before we're walking into calculus? Now, trigonometry, which we typically will just simply kind of refer to as trig, so for all of those who have done it in the past, starts to begin in grade 10, and then it spoils and over to grade 11, and then if you're lucky enough, if you take kind of an advanced functions course, you'll see it in grade 12 as well, which I highly recommend. Now, the steps or the things that you should obviously think about are the following. So you should 100% review your definitions of sine, cosine, and tangent. So that's clearly a must. You should know what those are all about. I can point up to the basic definitions up there that would date you back to pretty much grade 10. Now from there, from these, you're also going to start thinking about the actual kind of reciprocals of these. So you might have the cosecant, the secant, and then the cotangent. Now these ones are not as kind of powerful because we don't use them as much, so they don't stick around in our mind. But you should kind of review and then recall what these are. I think it should be helpful to you. And so for these cosecants, secants, and cotangents, okay, in terms of the definitions, I can put that link up above there for you as well. Now, that is kind of step number one. So that's the introduction, it gets you going with regards to this. Now, there are many things with regards to the sines, cosines, and tangents, which really is just dealing with triangles that we have. However, the next item that I would highly recommend, and this is, a relatively big one, because it's going to make your life a lot simpler. You're not going to have to reach out for the calculators as much, and you should get some kind of a concept if you can put this in your mind, and that is the unit circle. The unit circle is basically with regards to the various angles that you have. So there are certain angles that are extremely common, and those particular angles, once you learn them and ingrain them in your mind, they might go out of your mind every so often, but then when you look back at the unit circle, you'll be like, oh, okay, I do recall them. And then I would just say, practice just a few of them just so that it gets stuck back in your mind. So that particular unit circle, I've actually kind of plotted in here. This is from one of the past videos that I have done. So that's how the unit circle looks like. And it's should be in some way part of your toolkit if you're going to be studying anything to do with trigonometry or sinusoidal functions or anything of that nature. It's useful to know these. Now, I can put up a link to the introduction of that unit circle, and then I talk about there how I try to memorize it so that it's a little bit easier, and then I actually complete the entire thing all the way around that you see right here. So the unit circle would be kind of the number 2 thing. And that obviously stems from the introduction of those definitions of sine and cos. So now, what is next? What else should you think about before you're stepping in is the following. So kind of number 3, what I would say is, try to practice some common trig identities. Now, these are a little bit tough because, in the fact that when you're doing these, so within a unit, I believe they begin in kind of grade 11, and then they definitely spoil over to grade 12 if you have done any of the advanced functions courses, so anything of that nature. I do hope that your teachers teach you these and go over. Now, there are some common ones like, the double angle, okay, that you have. So some trig identities are, super useful to be able to go through. Now, I'm not going to mention all the different ones that you have in here. So with regards to the trig identities, I'll actually point you out kind of maybe towards in just a moment to the general link for all of these and where you can find it nicely organized in terms of grade 10, grade 11, and then grade 12 that deals with all the items. But trig identities are definitely useful to know because you can utilize them to your advantage if you're comfortable with them. Now, the next item, okay, so after these trig identities, which I believe is actually rather important, and it will help you, especially since in calculus you're going to be studying the sinusoidal actual functions, right? And your interest is the rate of change of these particular sinusoidal functions. So that means rate of change is going to lead you into studying the derivatives. And for that, okay, especially on the plotting side, and then having a very visual concept of these, because these are periodic functions, it certainly is worth your time to go over and brush up on transformations. Now, transformations, you have started way back, so from grade 11, you've done a lot of it. Grade 12, you have done a lot of it in the functions courses. Now, these transformations, I cover them. So if you have a parent function, so let's say your parent function is fx, and now you want to take this parent functions and you want to transform it. So the transformation looked something like this that you had. Okay, so some kind of basically, a stretch or a compression. Okay, so that was in the y. And then you would have your function, and then you would change your argument. So this particular argument, within there, you would have had d minus x minus h, okay, plus the k. And all of these had meaning to it. So this a, this d, so the a is stretch and compression in the y, the d is a stretch and compression in the x. This particular h that you see there was a shift in the x, so either to the left or to the right, and then the k was just a shift up or down of your parent function. Now, those transformations are useful because if you're going to be plotting any kind of sinusoidal functions, it's actually much easier to do it from the viewpoint of transformations. Some of them, indeed, get a little bit harder, and then transformations may not always work. You do need a little bit of calculus to help you along. But if you know the transformations, then it will help you quite a lot on plotting just the standard sinusoidal functions from sine, cosine, and even some of the cotangents, secants, and cosecants, and so on. Although you primarily just focus in on sine and cosine. So those transformations, super useful. I'll put up a link to the transformations and just kind of sines and cosines, and you can lead it from there if you want to. I love those transformations. They certainly do help you, especially since you're dealing with periodic functions and then how to deal with those. So that's number 4. Now, the last one, this one is not really that crucial for calculus, although it's kind of a nice reminder so that it doesn't spill out of your mind, especially if you're going to be continuing on beyond calculus. And so number 5, those would be just kind of all the different laws that we have. So the sine law, the cosine law. Okay, so that's as you're going through that. And these particular sines and cosine laws, you've started them kind of way back. Okay, so from grade 10 and then grade 11. They don't play an enormous role in rates of change per se, but they tie into an important topic, which is of course the trig identities. If you do know the sines and cosine laws, they do help you a bit in the trig identities and then some of the harder applications of calculus. So that's kind of an overview. Now, you might think, okay, well, it seems like a lot. I do believe that these are worth reviewing just so that they come back into your mind, so that you're not walking yourself into with no preparation into calculus, especially the chapter on the sinusoidal functions, because you're going to struggle and you're going to get frustrated. So I do think that this is worth your time. Now, I would highly suggest, if you really want an organized way of finding these things, so, I've created the entire kind of page for all the high school maths. So I'll put up a link up above there. So it is at the 1mjourney.com, but it's a link that just takes you to the math page exactly. And there, let me just pull it up for you. So that's the page. So this is the page that I run. Now, it's not just about math. It has numerous items there. But if you kind of scroll in there, okay, or look at the top, you'll see that there is a 1M Journey Math. And if you click on this, that's the link that I provided you, you're going to be able to find all the high school maths. And then for Trig, what you'll find is as you scroll to grade 10, you'll notice that there's the introduction to Trig in grade 10. So you have those basic items there. Okay, definitions of sines and cosines and tangents. So that's what I was linking. You have some of the sine laws and then the cosine laws, the basic ones in there. So those ones are pretty neat. And then as you scroll over to grade 11, so grade 11 starts to talk about functions, and it leads you on to, so now trigonometric kind of ratios. And this is where you're going to get introduced to the unit circle there. So this is what you see right there. So that's that particular chapter. Some of those are kind of reviews from grade 10, but it has, quite a lot of information in here if you want to refine yourself on these. And then it begins on the side of functions, and you'll see there transforming sines and cosines. There's a couple of parts there, and I even provide a test. I think these are worth your time to get into, right? So this is in grade 11. And then as you carry on into grade 12, functions, there's also more trig. So I've kind of summarized these in terms of a review. So you can look at that. And then it gets into trigonometry. Okay, so trigonometric functions. So a lot more on transforming there, in particular for cosecant and secant. Probably won't have to go that deep before calculus, but the sines and cosines are worth going over. And then you have your trig identities. So there's a whole kind of unit that I put together. Okay, so there's the double angle that you have, the compound angle formulas, and then there's various equivalent trig functions that you can think about. Now, how much of this should you do? Honestly, it's up to you, but you can pick off these topics that I've mentioned in here from there. But if you want a nice reference, you can always keep that and bookmark that page for yourself so that you can always go back. Okay, so that's all that I wanted to present in this video, because I just wanted to let students know before they start jumping in and studying the actual trig calculus, because the assumption is that you are kind of familiar with the sines and cosines. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in a future video, okay? Cheers, everybody. Bye.